today is about experience, capacity, maturity in training, specifically the difference between these concepts. So in my experience, I see all the time, I see it in my clients, I see it in my athletes, I see it in people in training. They confuse, we confuse experience, capacity, and we often neglect maturity, to be perfectly honest. I don't think there's a lot of athlete that will tell you I want to be a mature athlete, because that sounds that you want to be an old athlete. But anyhow, we confuse those three concepts. And so what I want to do in this video is to like clarify them a little bit, because I think if we clarify them a little bit, we can get a lot out of that clarification, and it can make us better athletes right away. The image here that you're observing this is in the Ukrainian parliament. This is one of the surprisingly many pictures that I could have picked of politicians fighting each other in Congress. This happens a lot, and I think it's fitting, because usually what we would want of our politicians is that they had a lot of capacity, they had a lot of experience, and they were very mature. And clearly, as you can see on this picture, we have none of those things. And so, yeah, that's why I chose that picture. I think it's hilarious and sad. Anyhow, so let's move first to our first concept. So our first concept here, this one is very, let me see, my computer wants to collaborate. There you go. So as you can see here on this title here is Lleve del barrio y traiga pa'l barrio. That's a Spanish, Latin American saying in which that is awesome. It literally means take from the hood and take it somewhere, and then bring it, whatever it is, towards the hood. So the idea there is that you should take ideas or concepts or traditions or whatever it is, foods, whatever, from your inner circle to the outside world, share it with the outside world, and you should go to the bigger world and bring ideas, concepts, foods, whatever it is, towards your inner circle. And that's a beautiful idea. I really like it. I try to implement it in everything that I do in my life. The first time I very consciously implemented was when I started bringing practices from my coaching in the gym into the classroom in the university, and that was a wonderful experience. I tried to think about the concept of warming up, a skill, and activity in particular things, just that framework into the classroom, and suddenly my classes were so much better, much more productive, just because I managed to create a context in which my students were ready to receive the information that I wanted, just because I had to warm them up towards that. And it's not a way in which we usually think in the classroom, and so it was very interesting. But anyhow, I like this concept because it allows you to be actively doing something, bringing from different domains or domains that don't seem that they connect very well, bring things, right, and take things away. And so I love this concept, and I'm bringing this here in this discussion because in training we're usually thinking about taking things from training into life, right? And so if you're going to the gym, or if you're training, or you're running, or whatever, most of the time what you're trying to do is make your life better. So what you want is your practices in the gym to transfer towards your life. It's funny that this is a little parenthesis there, but it's funny to me that often ends very fast. And so once you get into whatever activity, you forget about that and you start just focusing on getting better at that activity, and you forget that was never your goal, right? And so I want to become really good at working out. You're like, yeah, but you don't have to sacrifice your life for that. You actually wanted it the other way around. And right, so we often forget that. But however, that's not the point. The point is that we usually are always thinking in this direction, right? So we're thinking that what we want to do in training wants to transfer to life. And actually, what I want to do today in this video is to go the other way. I want to use what we know from life into training. So we are, instead of llevando del barrio, we're bringing to the hood. bringing shit to the hood. That's what we're doing. And I'm sorry if I am being culturally insensitive there with the use of the word hood, but I don't think I am. But anyhow, if I am, please correct me, and I will change that. Now let's talk about experience. So one thing that is very easy to understand in life is that experience and age are two different things, right? And so you can see kids that are like have at 13 years old have tons of experience. They're wise as fuck, and you can have 25 years old that you're like, how did you even are like alive with this little experience and wisdom, right? Or 40 or 45 or 50. And so that is very easy to understand in real life. It'll surprise you how little you understand in training. And so a lot of people don't realize that time in training is not the same as experience in training. And that is like, just think about it for a second. The fact that you have spent 10 years doesn't mean you're gonna be good at something, and it's probably because you're not having experience. You're just having time in training, which is different than experience in training. Same as in life. You can be alive for 40 years and still haven't learned much because you don't have a lot of experience. So that differentiation in life, I think, is easy to understand. In the gym, it's not so easy to understand, but like once you hear it, I think it makes sense. And the first, what that leads us is that like experience and times are different things, and experience is intentional, right? Like a person that has experience, that experience is intentional. Especially in training, this is not so true in life, but in training, we want experience to be intentional. And what we mean by experience is putting yourself in situations in which you're accounted for your actions, right? So often the people that like don't understand the difference in training are just going to training and kind of getting it done, getting a sweat on or working whatever it feels to them that is working really hard or whatever, right? But that's it. It ends there. And experience is intentional. It's like you have to be accounted for your actions, and you also have to be. There's one aspect there that is putting yourself in new situations. But what I mean by that is you want to put yourself in situations in which you can test whatever skill is that you're learning in different contexts. That's where the novelty, that's where the new part comes from, right? That's the intentional part. Like that has to be created. That context has to be created. So let me give you an example that lands this and makes this easier to understand. Imagine you were learning German, which is like the example that I always give, and so you're trying to have more experience, and by that is if you're learning like conversation at a very basic level, you want to put yourself in very different contexts in which you can have those conversations at the level that you are. And so you want to like talk with one of your colleagues, but also talk with somebody outside at a level that you can, right? And so and you want to like be accountable for what you do in those conversations, right? Like you want to like make sure that experience is observed by yourself or by somebody else, but that you are like, okay, what happened there? How did I do? How did I behave? Where was my skill, right? And so important thing there though is that those contexts have to coincide with your levels, with your skill level, right? Like if you're learning German and you're learning conversation 101, going to a Heidegger class might not be the best idea. But anyhow, and that experience, that being intentional and that needing to be, like putting yourself in situations where you're accounted for, also means that for that experience to be a true experience has to be reflective. Like it requires reflection. I like this saying from Mr. Dalio. I forgot his first name. It doesn't matter. That is, pain plus reflection equal growth. Pain by itself is just pain, and reflection by reflection is just castles in the air. It's just ideas. It's just theory. You need both. You need pain plus reflection to have growth, and in order to have experience, you need that, right? And so it doesn't serve just putting yourself in new situations. It serves putting yourself in new situations. Be held accountable. Be held accountable for your actions, and then analyzing and learning from those experiences. So experience requires reflection. So as you see with this idea of experience, time in the gym and experience in the gym are two very different things. And that if you're like, why have I spent so much time in the gym and not getting what I want? Maybe it's lack of experience, or maybe you see people that is like that progresses, like that is starting at a very similar place for you but progresses faster, and it's maybe they're having better experiences, right? And so this is important. It should be intentional. It should require reflection. I think that both of those things are really hard to do, much harder than people anticipate. And so if you're thinking about your own training here, think about if you're getting either. And what you want is to get more experience, not more time. Good. Now let's talk about capacity. So capacity is a little bit easier than experience, but the first differentiation that I want to do is capacity versus capability. I like this example. I think everybody can can cook an awesome omelette. I think everybody is capable of doing that, but I don't think everybody does because they don't know, because many of them don't know how. But I think if you get a person, you can teach them how to cook a fucking awesome omelette. It's something there that is possible for them, but not everybody has that capacity. And that means capacity is present, is tangible, is what you're able to do today, what you're able to do right now. And capability is potential, is theoretical, right? And so that's an important distinction. Second important clarification there is that capacity and experience are not linearly dependent. So this first comes because time in the gym is not the same as experience, right? Like, and so a lot of people will think like, they would confuse first time in the gym with experience, and because they think that time in the gym is equal experience, they will expect that if you spend a lot of time in the gym, you should have a lot of capacity. And that's a confusion. That's definitely not the case. But the confusion goes the other way too. People will think that like if a person that they're seeing has a lot of capacity, they have a lot of experience and a lot of time in the gym, and that's also not the case. They're related, but they're not dependent, right? And so you can have a lot more capacity than the person next to you with very little experience. And if you don't understand that can lead to stagnation, because I'll tell you why. Let's say that you arrive to a place and you have more capacity than everybody else, or like the standards for your sport are low for your present day capacity. You think you're very capable, is what you think, and so you don't go over. So that produces stagnation because you're not gonna look for more experience, right? And you're settling basically. And the other direction, it also works, right? And so let's say that you have limited capacity compared to like your surrounding, your environment, but actually you have a shit ton of experience, and your starting point was very low, and you have moved very very far, and you're very experienced, but your capacity is lower compared that to others. And so if you are thinking, if you're just looking in terms of capacity and don't look at your experience, at your real experience, you might get very frustrated, right? Like you're like, why am I here? I should be over there. You shouldn't. And so understanding capacity independently from experience is very important. And this leads to that third point, which is one of the things that is important about capacity is like you have to accept your capacity, whatever that is today, in order to make it better, in order to reach towards your capability. And I'll tell you why I see this happening all the time. So I'll tell people like, hey dude, I want you to run at this speed. They're like, I would like to run that faster. And what they want is they would like not to run that faster, they would like to be able to do that today. And so they think that because they would like that, that's the way they should go, right? And so they're not accepting their present day capacity. Let me give you another example. I have a lot of Olympic lifters, and so we test their lifts, their 100%, so what they're capable of, and then I give them like, do these weights at 80% of your max, 70% of your max. And most of people without experience will be like, yeah, well, I was feeling really good, so I thought my max today was gonna be a little bit higher. And so they make calculations with bigger numbers. Not accepting capacity. It's a beginner trap. It's really putting yourself over your capacity because you want to raise your capacity, and you think the way to do that is to force yourself there. Imagine thinking in terms of money. It's like you want to make more money, and in order to make more money, you spend more because that's what rich people do. And you're like, no, fuck, man, you just made yourself poor. And so that is a little bit what happens. And so you have to accept your capacity. You have to accept your financial capacity if you ever want to reach financial capability there, right? And so that is an important distinction. Good. So now that we have, so capacity is tangible, is present, is measurable, is what you can do now. And accepting that might be a little bit hard, but that is it. Experience, though, is the accumulation of very particular experiences, right? And so we want that to be intentional, we want that to be reflective, and that is actually experience. It's hard to measure, and it's not time, right? And so they're very different in nature. Good. Now let's go and talk about maturity. So maturity, and I want you to think about maturity in life, because maturity in life is very easy to understand. It's very intuitive. Like when you're 16 and somebody asks you to ask in a more mature way, it hurts you, but you know how. You don't do it, that's another story, but you know how, right? And so for me, maturity is composed by these three things: experience, the way we were talking, an intentional and reflective experience, ownership, and understanding, right? Like ownership is going to include that, like accepting who you are, accepting what your present capacity is, and understanding requires that you actually understand this too, right? Like it's very closely related with capacity. It's like not only accepting but understanding how to change that present capacity, and so that is maturity, is experience, ownership, and understanding. A person that has a lot of experience, that has a lot of ownership, and that understands a lot, it's particularly him or herself, it's a mature person for sure, right? Anyhow, so let's bring that concept of maturity, of maturity in life, towards training. And so I would like you to be a mature athlete. So first thing that you have to realize is maturity is an attitude, right? It's a set of behaviors. It's an approach to life. It's not fixed. It's really an attitude. It's like, how do you behave in a mature way? The second cool thing is that maturity is a gateway to live outside the box. If there are CrossFitters out there, there's a pond there, and it's definitely written for you. But maturity, if you're thinking about our example of experience in which you're putting yourself in new contexts, maturity is the ability. If you have a lot of experience, you are putting yourself in new context, and the more mature you are, the more you're gonna be looking for those different contexts, and the more you're gonna be looking for different perspectives. The more that you're gonna understand, like thinking in terms of life. A mature person is a person that knows that their perspective, their point of view is just their point of view, but they don't know this at theoretical level. They truly have accepted the fact, which is impossible. I have never been able to do that, but like you have truly accepted the fact that your point of view is just a point of view, and you listen to other points of view to enrich your views, right? And so if you're truly mature, you can live outside that box. You can live outside the barrio. You can, like that is important. And the third thing that we know about maturity is that maturity is not about milestones, right? And so one thing that you learn in life pretty early is that, like, just because somebody can pay their rent on time and they don't have credit card debt and like all this get your shit together get your shit together stuff, sorry. Just because they have that doesn't mean that they're mature. Although you could say that, mature people is probably gonna be paying their shit on time and so on, for sure. They have ownership, they take ownership of their actions. But, however, maturity is not about milestones, right? Like you'll find keep thinking about that 13-year-old that is mature as fuck. And it's not because he has reached any particular milestones. It's just because he or she has had a lot of experiences, takes a lot of ownership and understands a lot, right? I think a lot of, and I'm thinking this about Colombian children that like have gone through hardship in the civil war or something like that, and like they have so much maturity. I remember when I was a counselor for kids in a camp for kids that had been mutilated and amputated because of mines in the guerrilla wars. And those kids, you know, I was older than all those kids, but definitely less mature, way less mature, way less wise. I was not ready to take ownership of any of my shit. They were very ready to do so. I learned from them. They didn't learn from me, to be perfectly honest. Maybe they did, but like not think that I was teaching them. Maybe they learned shit that I was doing wrong. Anyhow, so that was a good experience. So yeah, so maturity is not about milestones, and so let's apply this to the gym, right? To your training. The first thing that you need to know, and this comes back to capacity, is that in order to be a mature athlete, you don't have to reach certain level of capacity. Actually, thinking that way is not gonna let you to like increase your capacity and not gonna make you a very mature athlete. What you want to be gaining is experience and ownership. And sure do, if you do that, you're gonna be reaching your capability. That's the first thing. Maturity is in training is a gateway to live outside your constrained circle, right? So you want to be going outside your hood and then bring into your hood shit, right? If you're like an Olympic lifter and you haven't considered other areas in which people generates power and strength, and if you're not learning from all those other areas and bringing it to your own training, you're not a mature athlete, right? And so look for that. And then maturity is an attitude, it's a behavior, it's a decision that you make. I want to be a mature athlete. And so with that, I want to leave you. And the whole thing of the whole point of this video is be a mature athlete, right? Like, don't be so focused on experience and capacity. Like, don't confuse experience with capacity and be so focused on capacity that like you cannot see the bigger picture, that you cannot think outside the box, right? And so be a mature athlete. And the subtitle there, you know how it's important, because when in life, and again, this is one of those concepts that like we're gonna bring from life to the gym, is you know how to be mature in life. Like, you don't need me to tell you how to be mature in life. Definitely not. In most situations and decisions that you're making in your life, when you're having a discussion with somebody and you're so into the discussion that like you have a part of your brain that is telling you like, dude, this is fucking stupid. Just act with some maturity. It's hard to do, but you know what that is. And so you don't need me to tell you. So you can forget about all these discussions that we're having and just focus on being a mature athlete, which I'm sure like is something that you haven't think before. Like, you didn't go to the gym and be like, I'm going to be a mature athlete, but it's something that you should do. It's a way that you should behave if you are into making the most out of your training, right? Because being a mature person is the way you're gonna get the most out of life. Well, being a mature athlete is the way that you're gonna get the most out of your training. So again, taking from the outside world and bringing it to the hood. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please share it. Yeah, that is it. Have a super fun, I don't know, whatever it is that you're doing, and yeah, man, that is it. Bye bye, drivers. Have fun. I'm a fucking daughter. Oh, you knew that. So